The phone call came on my 35th birthday, the same day the neighborhood kids swore they saw someone who looked exactly like me watching our house from across the street. I dismissed their stories as childhood imagination, until my mother's number lit up my screen after 15 years of silence. The voice on the other end wasn't hers, but it was hauntingly familiar, like hearing my own voice played back on a recording. "I think I'm your sister," she said. "Your twin." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Ellie Reynolds, and this is the story of how I discovered my entire life had been built on a foundation of lies. Growing up as an only child in our quiet suburban neighborhood of Mapleton, I'd always felt like something was missing, an empty space beside me that no one else could see. I had an imaginary friend named Lily until I was 12. Someone who understood me without words, who felt my pain before I spoke it. My parents, especially my mother Caroline, discouraged this childish fantasy, growing increasingly concerned when I insisted Lily was real even as I approached adolescence. "Ellie, there's no one there," my mother would say, her voice tinged with something I couldn't identify then but now recognize as fear. "It's not healthy to keep pretending." My father would look away during these conversations, his silence a weight I couldn't interpret. Looking back, I should have recognized the guilt etched in the lines around his eyes, the way he couldn't meet my gaze whenever Lily was mentioned. School psychologists suggested I was manufacturing a companion to cope with loneliness, and eventually, I learned to stop talking about Lily altogether. But I never stopped feeling her presence. In dreams, in moments of deep emotion, in the strange certainty that someone was missing from family photographs. I would stare at group pictures and feel an inexplicable emptiness, as if someone had been edited out. As I grew older, other peculiarities emerged. The neighbor who mistook me for someone else at the grocery store. The college roommate who swore she'd seen me across campus when I was in class. The elderly woman who approached me at a cafe, tears in her eyes, asking if I was the other Reynolds girl. Each time my mother would dismiss these incidents with tight-lipped explanations. Doppelgangers exist, people make mistakes, memory is fallible. When I was 20, my mother was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. During her decline, she became increasingly agitated, muttering about fixing mistakes and telling the truth, while my father hovered anxiously, steering conversations away from her fevered confessions. I attributed her ramblings to medication and pain. 3 months later, she was gone, taking her secrets with her. My father retreated into grief so profound it seemed to age him overnight, and our already strained relationship fractured further. I moved forward with my life, establishing a career as a pediatric speech therapist, specializing in children with communication disorders. There was something deeply satisfying about helping kids find their voices, perhaps because I'd spent so much of my life feeling unheard. I bought a small bungalow in Mapleton, just 8 blocks from my childhood home where my father still lived, though we spoke only on holidays and birthdays. The distance between us expanded into a chasm I didn't know how to cross, especially after he remarried 5 years after my mother's death. Sharon was kind but pragmatic, and she seemed to understand that some broken things can't be fixed. "He carries so much regret," she told me once, during a rare moment alone at a Thanksgiving dinner. "Sometimes, I think it's crushing him." When I asked what he regretted, she looked surprised. "Everything with you and your sister, of course." Before I could question this bizarre statement, my father returned, and Sharon's expression closed like a book snapped shut. The incident troubled me, but I dismissed it as a misunderstanding. Perhaps she was confused about my family history, or referring to a step-sibling from a previous marriage I didn't know about. I never brought it up again, filing it away with all the other inexplicable moments that dotted my childhood like breadcrumbs leading nowhere. My 30s arrived with the comfortable certainty of established routines. My therapy practice thrived, I maintained a small but close circle of friends, and I'd recently ended a relationship with Ben, a kind but ultimately incompatible architect who couldn't understand why I struggled with emotional intimacy. "It's like you're saving half of yourself for someone else," he said during our final conversation. The accuracy of his observation unsettled me for weeks afterward. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. 3 days before my 35th birthday, 11-year-old Mia from next door knocked on my door, eyes wide with excitement. "Miss Ellie, there's a lady who looks just like you taking pictures of your house." By the time I rushed outside, the woman was gone, but Mia's description sent chills through me. Same hair, same face. But she seemed sad when I asked if she was your sister. I might have dismissed it as childish exaggeration, except 2 other neighborhood kids reported similar sightings over the next days. Each time, the woman disappeared before I could investigate. I installed a doorbell camera, feeling ridiculous even as I did so, and checked the footage obsessively. Nothing. I considered calling my father, but hesitated. Our conversations were already strained. Adding apparent paranoia wouldn't help. On the morning of my birthday, I woke to a strange sense of anticipation, as if my body knew something my mind didn't. I went through my morning routine with deliberate normalcy: coffee on the porch, 30 minutes of yoga, a quick shower before my first patient at 9. The phone call came as I was gathering my keys and bag, the number displaying my father's name but somehow different. A mobile number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" My voice sounded strange even to my own ears. "Is this Ellie Reynolds?" The voice was disconcertingly familiar, like hearing myself on a recording but with subtle differences. A slight accent I couldn't place, a melodic quality my own speech lacked. "Yes, who's this?" I sank onto the hallway bench, suddenly certain I needed to be sitting down. "My name is Lillian Mercer. I think I'm your sister. Your twin sister." The world tilted on its axis as she continued. "I've been trying to find the courage to approach you for weeks. I'm outside your house right now." With trembling legs, I walked to the front door and pulled it open. There she was, my mirror image standing on my porch, tears streaming down a face identical to mine in every detail, except for a small crescent-shaped scar above her right eyebrow. We stared at each other in stunned silence, 2 halves of a whole that had never known completion. "Lily," I whispered, the name of my childhood imaginary friend suddenly heavy with meaning. She nodded, tears flowing freely now. "Ellie, you used to visit me in my dreams. I thought I was going crazy." I reached out hesitantly, my fingertips brushing her arm. Solid, real, not a hallucination or dream. Something electric passed between us, a recognition so profound it defied language. In that moment, 35 years of emptiness suddenly made perfect sense. The missing piece wasn't something, it was someone. "Come inside," I managed to say, my professional appointments forgotten. "I think we have a lot to talk about." Over the next 3 hours, sitting at my kitchen table with hands wrapped around cooling mugs of tea, Lily unfolded a story so bizarre it would have seemed like fiction if the evidence weren't sitting across from me, mirroring my expressions and mannerisms with uncanny precision. She had been adopted as an infant by the Mercers, a wealthy couple from Seattle who were told her birth mother had died in childbirth and the father couldn't care for a child alone. They were loving parents who supported her through a childhood plagued by inexplicable anxiety, night terrors, and a persistent feeling of incompleteness. Like me, she had struggled with the certainty that someone was missing from her life. "I used to draw pictures of 2 identical girls holding hands," she said, pulling a worn sketchbook from her bag. "My parents thought I was drawing myself with an imaginary friend. They sent me to therapists who suggested it was a way of processing adoption trauma." She flipped through pages of childish drawings, 2 girls with matching brown hair and green eyes, always connected, always smiling. "I drew those too," I whispered, remembering the concerned looks my parents exchanged when they found my sketchbooks. "They took me to doctors who said I was compensating for loneliness." Lily nodded, a familiar gesture that sent another jolt of recognition through me. When I was 12, I started having vivid dreams about a girl named Ellie, who lived in a yellow house with a wraparound porch. I could describe details I had no way of knowing. The crack in your bedroom ceiling that looked like a lightning bolt, the way your mother arranged flowers in the blue vase on Sundays, the hiding spot under the stairs where you kept your treasures. My breath caught. "My dreams about you stopped when I was 12. My mother was particularly adamant after that point that I stop, indulging in fantasies. Mine intensified," Lily continued. "I started drawing maps of a town I'd never visited, describing people I'd never met. My parents were frightened enough to hospitalize me briefly. After medication and therapy, the dreams became less vivid, but they never stopped completely. 3 years ago, Lily's adoptive mother had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. On her deathbed, racked with guilt and the need for absolution, she had revealed that Lily's adoption had been unusual. There had been whispers of money changing hands, of legal corners cut, of a twin separated at birth. She gave Lily a name, Ellie Reynolds, and begged forgiveness before passing. My father confirmed it afterward, Lily said, twisting a silver ring on her finger in a nervous gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. He admitted they'd been approached by a lawyer representing a wealthy client who needed a very specific type of arrangement, a closed adoption with absolute confidentiality, for a significantly higher than normal fee. They were told the birth mother had died, but the father wanted one daughter kept nearby while the other was placed with a family far away. That makes no sense, I said, struggling to process this revelation. Why would anyone separate twins? And if my mother, our mother, died in childbirth, why would our father keep one of us but not both? Lily's expression darkened. That's the part that doesn't add up. My father couldn't provide many details. He says they were told very little beyond what was necessary for the adoption. But he did give me the lawyer's name. It took Lily 2 years to track down the elderly attorney, now retired in Arizona. Initially reluctant to breach confidentiality, he eventually relented when faced with Lily's determination and the undeniable evidence of her connection to a family she'd never known. What he revealed shattered the foundation of everything I'd believed about my life. Our mother didn't die in childbirth, Ellie. According to the lawyer, Ellie Reynolds suffered severe postpartum psychosis after delivering twins. She became convinced that one of us was somehow wrong, a changeling or an evil duplicate. She refused to accept that twins were natural and demanded that your father, our father, get rid of one of us. I shook my head in disbelief. Memories of my mother's cold perfectionism suddenly cast in a sinister light. That's impossible. My mother was controlling, yes, but psychotic? I can't believe that. The lawyer said she threatened to harm herself and possibly us if both babies remained in the house. Our father was desperate and terrified. The lawyer arranged a private adoption through connections rather than proper channels. The official records were altered to show a single birth. You. I effectively ceased to exist in any legal sense. But why wouldn't he tell me when she died? Why maintain the lie after she was gone? The betrayal felt like a physical wound, deep and throbbing. Lily's expression softened with compassion. According to the lawyer, by then the deception had gone on for 20 years. Our father was afraid of legal consequences, of losing you too if you discovered what he'd done. The lawyer advised him to maintain the secret, and apparently he chose to do so. We sat in stunned silence, two halves of a whole separated by lies and fear, finally reunited by truth and courage. The anger I felt toward my father was a living thing, hot and writhing in my chest. But beneath it was a more complex emotion, a profound sadness for the years lost, the bond denied, the sister I should have known from birth. How did you find me? I finally asked. The lawyer gave me our birth certificates, the original ones, before they were altered. Once I had your full name and birthplace, the rest was just research. Social media, professional registries. I found your therapy practice website with your photo, and it was like looking in a mirror. Lily smiled, a hesitant, hopeful expression. I've been in Mapleton for 3 weeks, gathering courage. I rented an Airbnb on Willow Street and walked past your house every day, trying to imagine what I would say when we finally met. The neighborhood kids saw you, I realized. They thought there were 2 of me. Children notice more than adults sometimes, Lily said. A little girl with pigtails asked if I was your sister. When I said yes, she looked at me like I'd confirmed something she already knew. Mia, I said with a small laugh. She's incredibly perceptive. Lily hesitated, then asked the question that hung between us. Have you spoken to our father? Does he know I'm here? I shook my head. We barely speak anymore. After our mother died, he just retreated, remarried eventually, but our relationship never recovered. His new wife called me, Lily said quietly. Sharon, That's how I got his mobile number. Apparently, he confessed everything to her years ago, and she's been encouraging him to tell you the truth. When she saw my messages on his phone, she contacted me behind his back. I stared at her, stunned by this additional betrayal. Sharon knew? All this time, she knew I had a twin sister, and she never said anything? She said she tried to bring it up once, but you didn't seem to understand what she was referring to, and your father intervened before she could explain. Lily's voice was gentle, as if trying to soften the blow. She thought it wasn't her story to tell, but she's been pushing him to come clean for years. I remembered that odd Thanksgiving conversation with sudden clarity. Sharon's surprise when I didn't understand her reference to your sister, the way my father had appeared at exactly that moment. It hadn't been a misunderstanding at all. It had been a tentative attempt at truth quickly suppressed. I need to see him, I said, standing abruptly. We need to see him. Today. Lily nodded, rising to match my movement with mirror-like precision. I've waited 35 years to meet my father. Our father. I can wait a few more hours if you need time to process all this. I looked at this woman, this stranger who was also the most familiar person I'd ever encountered, and felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it took my breath away. No more waiting, I said firmly. No more secrets. We do this together now. As we gathered our things, a lifetime of disconnected incidents suddenly made perfect sense. The inexplicable emotions that seemed to come from nowhere, the dreams about places I'd never seen, the persistent feeling that half of me was missing. I hadn't been broken or defective. I'd been incomplete in the most literal sense. We drove to my father's house in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The neighborhood looked different somehow, as if the revelation had altered the physical landscape of my childhood. The modest two-story colonial where I'd grown up appeared smaller than I remembered, diminished by the weight of the lies it had contained. I parked in the driveway, hands shaking slightly as I turned off the engine. Ready? I asked, looking at my sister. My twin, my other half. Lily's smile was tremulous but determined. I've been ready my whole life. Together, we walked to the front door, our footsteps naturally falling into perfect synchrony. Before I could use my key or ring the bell, the door swung open. My father stood there, looking aged beyond his 65 years, Sharon hovering anxiously behind him. His eyes moved from me to Lily and back again, filling with tears as his shoulders slumped in defeat and relief. I always knew this day would come, he said, voice breaking. Please come in. It's time for the truth. As we crossed the threshold, side by side for the first time since our birth, I felt something settle into place, a completeness I'd searched for my entire life without knowing what I was missing. The conversation ahead would be difficult, painful, possibly unforgivable, but I was no longer facing it alone. For the first time in 35 years, I was whole. My father's living room felt like a confessional, hushed, tense, heavy with the weight of decades of deception. Sharon had quietly excused herself after making tea, understanding that this conversation needed to happen between the three of us. For several minutes, we sat in silence. Lily and I on the sofa, unconsciously mirroring each other's posture, my father across from us in his worn leather armchair, looking diminished and ancient. I don't know where to begin, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. The beginning would be appropriate, I replied, surprised by the coldness in my tone. Beside me, Lily reached for my hand, our fingers intertwining naturally, as if we'd been doing it our whole lives. My father nodded, eyes fixed on our joined hands. You were born on April 18, 1990, at Mapleton Memorial, both of you, perfect identical twins. Your mother hadn't known she was carrying twins. The second heartbeat was obscured during prenatal visits. The surprise should have been joyful, but... He paused, swallowing hard. Caroline had a history of mental health issues before we met. Depression in college, anxiety that she managed with medication she discontinued during pregnancy. The doctors called it severe postpartum psychosis. He described those first terrifying days. My mother's initial bewilderment transforming into paranoia, her insistence that having twins was unnatural, her growing conviction that one baby, she couldn't decide which, was somehow malevolent or inhuman. She refused to name us, refused to touch us, became increasingly agitated and erratic. She threatened to harm herself, to harm you both. The doctors wanted to hospitalize her, but her parents, your grandparents, were influential people in this town. They were concerned about scandal, about their daughter being labeled. They convinced me that with home care, proper medication, and time, she would stabilize. For a few weeks they tried. A night nurse helped with feedings while my mother cycled between catatonia and rage. But her condition deteriorated, and her fixation on separating the twins intensified. One night, she threatened to take her life unless one of you was removed from the house. Her father, your grandfather, suggested a solution. He knew people who could arrange a private adoption, quietly and without records that would reflect on the family. I was young, terrified, sleep-deprived, and completely out of my depth. His voice broke. I convinced myself it was temporary, that once Caroline recovered, we would bring Lillian home and be a complete family. But recovery proved elusive. My mother stabilized somewhat once Lily was gone, able to bond with me and function superficially. The separation that was meant to be temporary calcified into permanence. My grandparents pressured my father to maintain the fiction, threatening legal action if he disrupted their daughter's fragile stability. Your mother never fully recovered, but she managed her condition with medication and therapy. The psychiatrists warned that reintroducing the truth could trigger a psychotic break. As years passed, bringing Lillian home became more complicated. The explanations required more impossible. I told myself I was protecting everyone. Protecting you, Ellie, from a mother who might unravel, protecting Lillian from being inserted into a home with a parent who had rejected her, protecting your mother from a truth that might destroy her. You were protecting yourself, I said quietly, from facing the consequences of your choice. He nodded, tears tracking down his lined face. Yes, that too. The guilt is overwhelming. Every time you mentioned your imaginary friend Lily, every time you drew pictures of two identical girls, every time you woke screaming from dreams you couldn't explain, it was like punishment for what I'd done. Lily spoke for the first time, her voice gentle but firm. What happened to my adoption records? Legally, this arrangement couldn't have been legitimate. My father explained the web of deception: falsified birth certificates showing a single birth, adoption papers created through connections rather than proper channels, money changing hands to ensure discretion. My grandfather's influence and wealth had paved the way for a clean disappearance. Lily had officially never existed. When your mother died, he continued, addressing me, I almost told you then, but I was afraid you'd never forgive me, afraid of legal ramifications, afraid of destroying the memory of your mother. Sharon has been urging me to come clean for years, but I couldn't find the courage. And my adoptive parents? Lily asked. How much did they know? They knew there were unusual circumstances, but not the specifics. They were told the birth mother had died and the father, me, could only care for one child. They were good people who desperately wanted a baby and were willing to work outside normal channels. The story unfolded like a Greek tragedy, decisions made in moments of crisis cascading into decades of separation and pain. As my father spoke, I felt my anger shifting, not diminishing but transforming into something more complex. The young, terrified man he described, faced with an impossible situation, seemed distant from the father I knew. The quiet, guilt-ridden man who had always seemed to be carrying a burden too heavy to name. I'll never forgive myself, he said finally. I don't expect either of you to forgive me either. But I want you to know that not a day has passed when I haven't thought of you both, together, the way you should have been. Lily's response surprised me. I had wonderful parents who loved me completely, she said. My life hasn't been a tragedy, but I've always felt half complete, like I was searching for something I couldn't name. She squeezed my hand. Now I understand why. I remained silent, processing this revelation. The betrayal still burned, but alongside it grew a strange gratitude that Lily had been loved, that we had found each other, despite everything designed to keep us apart. What happens now? My father asked, looking between us with something like hope in his ravaged face. Now, I said, standing and pulling Lily up with me, My sister and I have 35 years of catching up to do. The rest we'll figure out later. As we left, my father remained in his chair, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. At the door, I turned back. "We'll talk again," I said. "Not forgiveness, not yet, but not a permanent severing either." He nodded, understanding the tentative olive branch for what it was. In the days that followed, Lily and I were inseparable, piecing together our parallel lives like a complex puzzle. She extended her hotel stay indefinitely, and we spent every available moment together, talking until our voices grew hoarse, discovering the countless ways we were similar and the fascinating ways we differed. We had both pursued helping professions. Me as a speech therapist, Lily as a child psychologist specializing in trauma. We both drank our coffee with cinnamon, suffered from migraines triggered by weather changes, and had an irrational fear of elevators. But where I was cautious and analytical, Lily was impulsive and intuitive. My apartment was minimalist and organized. Photos of her Seattle home revealed colorful chaos. I played piano. She played guitar. I rose with the sun. She was a night owl. Nature versus nurture, playing out in real time. Lily observed as we compiled our growing list of similarities and differences. Same DNA, different environments. The most unsettling discoveries involved our unexplainable connections. We had both experienced intense, inexplicable emotions at identical moments throughout our lives. Lily had been overcome with grief during her high school graduation, the exact day my first serious boyfriend had died in a car accident. I had felt sudden, inexplicable joy during a rainstorm in 2015, the moment Lily had learned she was pregnant with her daughter Emma, now 7. "Emma," I repeated, staring at photos of my niece, a child who shared my DNA but whom I'd never known existed. "I have a niece. She has our eyes," Lily said softly. "When she was born, my adoptive mother commented that she must have gotten them from somewhere in my biological family. If only she had known how right she was." We discovered we had both married in our 20s. Lily to David, a software engineer she met in college. Me to Christopher, a musician I'd fallen for despite my practical nature. Both marriages had ended after 5 years, though for different reasons. Hers because David had been unfaithful, mine because Christopher and I had gradually grown apart, wanting different futures. "I felt your heartbreak," Lily confessed. "During my divorce, I had dreams about a man playing piano, apologizing as he packed his things. I woke up crying for weeks, mourning a relationship that wasn't even mine." The most painful revelation came when Lily shared her medical history. 3 miscarriages before Emma, all at exactly 12 weeks. I had never tried to have children, always feeling inexplicably certain it wasn't the right path for me. "I wonder if we felt each other's trauma," I mused. "If your body was carrying all the reproductive grief for both of us." We tested our connection with small experiments. Sitting in separate rooms, trying to send each other thoughts. Blindfolded, attempting to identify objects the other was touching. Synchronizing our breathing to see if it affected our heart rates. The results were inconsistent, but uncanny enough to convince us that our bond transcended normal sibling relationships. "Twin telepathy is documented in scientific literature," Lily said, ever the researcher. "But most studies involve twins raised together. What we're experiencing might be unique. The connection of identical twins separated at birth, finding each other after decades apart." On the 5th day after our reunion, we decided it was time to confront the practical implications of our discovery. Over breakfast at my kitchen table, Lily raised the question we'd both been avoiding. "What do we do about the legal aspects of this? Technically, I don't legally exist as your sister. My birth certificate lists different parents. There was fraud involved in my adoption. Does any of that matter now, or do we just move forward as we are?" I considered this. "I think that depends on what we want our relationship to be going forward. Are you planning to return to Seattle soon? Will this be visits and phone calls, or—" I hesitated, not wanting to presume too much. Lily set down her coffee cup decisively. "I've already contacted my practice about taking an extended leave. Emma is with her father for the summer anyway. I'm not ready to go back to a life without you in it, not when we've just found each other." Relief flooded through me. "I've been thinking the same thing but didn't want to pressure you. Your whole life is in Seattle." "Half my life," she corrected with a smile. The other half, it seems, has been here all along. We decided to consult an attorney specializing in family law, a woman recommended by one of my colleagues. Melissa Chen listened to our extraordinary story without visible shock, taking meticulous notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. When we finished, she sat back and considered us thoughtfully. "This is certainly an unusual situation," she said finally. "From a legal standpoint, several issues need to be addressed. First, the falsification of birth records is a serious matter, though the statute of limitations may have expired for some aspects. Second, there's the question of your legal relationship to each other, and potentially to your father's estate. Third, there could be implications for your adoptive parents, Ms. Mercer, though as they acted in good faith with what they were told, they're likely not culpable." She outlined a potential path forward: DNA testing to establish our biological relationship officially, petitioning the court to amend birth records, possibly pursuing legal action against those who facilitated the fraudulent adoption if we chose that route. "Do we have to involve our father in this?" I asked, still uncertain how I felt about him. "Eventually, yes, especially for the birth certificate amendments. But nothing needs to happen immediately. Take time to consider what outcome you're seeking. Is this about legal recognition of your relationship? Financial considerations? Justice for the deception? Your goals will shape the approach." We left with more questions than answers, but a framework for moving forward. Walking back to my house, Lily linked her arm through mine, a gesture that already felt natural. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. "I want legal recognition that we're sisters, twins. Beyond that, I'm not interested in punishing our father. He's punished himself enough over the years." "I agree. And I'm not looking for financial compensation or anything like that. I just want to exist officially as your sister. The rest feels like it would just create more pain without healing anything." That night, unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through my phone, looking at the dozens of photos we'd taken over the past days. Selfies of us together, each image a visual shock of similarity and difference. In one, we stood arm in arm on my porch, matching smiles but distinctly different styles, my practical button-down and jeans contrasting with Lily's flowing bohemian dress. I texted the photo to my father with a simple message: "Your daughters." 3 minutes later, my phone rang. "I don't deserve this kindness," he said when I answered, his voice thick with emotion. "This isn't about what you deserve," I replied. "It's about moving forward." There was a long pause. "Sharon and I have been talking. The house is too big for just us. We've been considering downsizing anyway. I thought, perhaps, it could be yours, both of yours. A belated inheritance for the years you should have shared there." The offer stunned me. My childhood home was substantial. 4 bedrooms, a spacious yard, walking distance to both our workplaces. "Dad, that's—" "Please consider it," he interrupted. "It wouldn't erase what I did, but it might give you both a place to build the relationship you should have had all along." I promised to discuss it with Lily and ended the call, emotions swirling. The house represented so much: the site of our separation, the physical manifestation of decades of lies. Could it be transformed into something healing instead? When I showed Lily the text exchange the next morning, her reaction was unexpected. "I've always had dreams about that house," she said quietly. "The back garden with the oak tree, the window seat in the upstairs bedroom, the creaky 3rd step on the staircase." She looked at me, eyes bright with unshed tears. "I've been homesick for a place I wasn't supposed to remember." 2 weeks after our reunion, we made 2 significant decisions. First, we would accept our father's offer of the house, not as compensation, but as an opportunity to create new memories in a place that should have held both our childhoods. Second, we would pursue legal recognition of our relationship without seeking punitive action against those involved in our separation. Melissa helped us navigate the complex legal process. DNA tests confirmed what we already knew. We were identical twins, sharing 100% of our genetic markers. With this evidence, we petitioned the court to amend my birth certificate to reflect the twin birth, and to issue Lily a corrected birth certificate listing her true parentage. The process was complicated by the deliberate falsification of records, requiring affidavits from our father and the retired lawyer who had arranged the adoption. As the legal proceedings moved forward, we began the practical work of merging our separate lives. Lily returned briefly to Seattle to sublet her apartment and arrange for her possessions to be shipped to Mapleton. She coordinated with her ex-husband about Emma, who would continue the planned summer with her father but would visit during school breaks. I rearranged my practice schedule to accommodate our new shared life, reducing hours to create space for the emotional work of reconnection. Our father and Sharon moved to a smaller house across town, leaving us the family home earlier than planned. The day they handed over the keys was emotional for everyone. As Sharon hugged us goodbye, she whispered, "I always told him the truth would set him free. I just didn't know it would set all of you free." Alone in the house that evening, Lily and I walked through each room, sharing different perspectives of the same spaces. In my childhood bedroom, now to be Emma's when she visited, Lily pointed to the ceiling. "The crack that looks like lightning. I used to dream about it. Sometimes I'd wake up afraid during thunderstorms, feeling like the ceiling might split open." In the kitchen, I showed her the cabinet where our mother had kept her extensive tea collection. She was obsessive about organization. Each type had its own labeled container, arranged alphabetically. "My adoptive mother collected teapots," Lily said, "but she displayed them chaotically, wherever there was space. It used to drive me crazy. I'd reorganize them when she wasn't looking." We discovered that the very act of sharing these memories, one lived, one dreamed, was healing something fundamental in both of us. Each shared observation, each "I know that" moment, each synchronicity confirmed that our connection had survived 3.5 decades of deliberate separation. In the backyard, beneath the ancient oak tree, we uncovered a forgotten time capsule I'd buried when I was 10, a rusted cookie tin containing childish treasures, a friendship bracelet, a collection of smooth pebbles, a handwritten note describing my dreams for the future, and a crude drawing of 2 identical girls holding hands. "You knew?" Lily said, touching the faded drawing gently. "Some part of you always knew." "We both did," I replied. "They could separate our lives, but not our souls." As summer turned to fall, we established new routines and traditions. Sunday brunches on the porch, discussing the week ahead, evening walks through the neighborhood, trading stories of our separate lives, nightly phone calls with Emma, building a relationship with the niece I'd just discovered, twice monthly dinners with our father and Sharon, gradually rebuilding trust through honest conversations and shared memories. The legal process concluded with surprising swiftness, aided by our father's full cooperation and the compelling nature of our case. By Christmas, we both had amended birth certificates acknowledging our twin birth, correcting a decades-old wrong with simple bureaucratic documentation. For Lily's first Christmas in Mapleton, Emma joined us, a bright-eyed 7-year-old who adapted to the revelation of a bonus aunt with the resilience of childhood. "You look exactly the same but different," she declared upon meeting me, her head tilted in assessment. "Like when you see the same picture twice but something tiny changed." "That's exactly right," I told her, charmed by her perception. "We're the same, but different." Our father visited on Christmas Eve, bringing gifts and lingering anxiety. As Emma played with her new art supplies, he pulled us aside, his expression serious. "I've set up trust funds for both of you," he said, raising a hand when we began to protest. "Not as payment or penance, but as acknowledgement, what should have been shared equally from the beginning. And a college fund for Emma." His voice softened. "My granddaughter." It was the first time he'd claimed that relationship aloud, and I saw Lily's expression shift, another small piece of healing falling into place. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed with promises that Santa would find her in this new place, Lily and I sat by the Christmas tree, watching the play of lights on wrapped packages. "Do you ever wonder," Lily asked, "what our lives would have been like if we'd grown up together? If our mother had gotten proper help, instead of our grandfather's misguided solution?" I considered this alternate reality. 2 identical girls sharing childhood adventures, teenage confidences, young adult milestones. "We would have been different people," I said finally, "shaped by different experiences. Better or worse. Just different. You might not have Emma." I might not have found my calling in speech therapy. We wouldn't appreciate finding each other so profoundly. Lily nodded, reaching for my hand in what had become our habitual connection. I've been thinking about what you said months ago, about moving forward rather than looking back. I'm ready to focus on the future we're building, rather than the past we lost. As midnight approached, marking the end of our first Christmas together, I felt a sense of completion that had eluded me my entire life. The journey ahead would have challenges, integrating our separate histories, navigating our relationship with our father, helping Emma understand her expanded family. But for the first time, I wasn't facing life's complexities alone. The imaginary friend of my childhood had become the flesh and blood sister of my adulthood. The inexplicable emptiness had been filled with understanding. The mystery of my other half had been solved not through fantasy but through courageous truth-telling. "Merry Christmas, sister," Lily whispered as the clock struck 12. "Merry Christmas, twin," I replied, the word still new and magical on my tongue. Outside, snow began to fall, covering our shared home in a blanket of pristine white, nature's symbolism for the fresh start we'd been given, a second chance at the bond that had been denied us for 35 years. Spring brought transformation to Mapleton, mirroring the profound changes in our lives. Cherry blossoms dusted the sidewalks like pink snow, and the garden Lily and I had replanted during winter's dormancy began showing the first promising shoots of renewal. 6 months into our reunion, we had established rhythms and routines that made our shared life feel both miraculous and utterly natural, as if we'd never been apart. The legal aspects of our situation had been largely resolved. Our amended birth certificates officially recognized our twin status, and with Melissa Chen's expert guidance, we had navigated the complex implications for medical records, insurance, and identification documents. My father had been forthcoming with authorities, providing detailed statements about the circumstances of our separation. His cooperation and the statute of limitations on most of the potential charges meant he faced no criminal consequences, a relief to us both, despite our complicated feelings about his role in our separation. I received the final paperwork from the court today, Lily announced one evening as we prepared dinner together. She handed me an envelope containing official documents with embossed seals. "We're legally recognized as identical twins born to Caroline and Thomas Reynolds. 35 years late, but still." I traced my finger over our names printed side by side on the document. "Ellie and Lily Reynolds," I said softly. As it should have been all along. Lily had decided to take our biological family name, a choice that felt significant. Not a rejection of the Mercers who had raised her with love, but an acknowledgement of her true origins and a commitment to our shared future. Her adoptive father had supported the decision with characteristic generosity. "You'll always be my daughter," he told her during a video call we'd all shared. "Adding another name, another family, doesn't change that. It just makes you more whole." Our professional lives had evolved to accommodate our new reality. I had transitioned my speech therapy practice to a hybrid model, seeing some clients virtually to create more flexibility. Lily had connected with a psychology practice in Mapleton that welcomed her expertise in childhood trauma, allowing her to establish a professional foothold while maintaining her Seattle clients through telehealth sessions. Emma had integrated into our expanded family with remarkable resilience, spending weekends and school breaks in what she called the twin house. Her presence brought a multi-generational fullness to our home, her childish energy and curiosity healing something in both of us. She asked endless questions about our separation and reunion, processing the complex family dynamics with the straightforward wisdom of childhood. "So Grandpa Thomas made a mistake because Great-Grandma Carolyn was sick in her mind?" she had asked during her spring break visit, carefully arranging shells we'd collected during a beach excursion. "That's a good way to put it," Lily had answered, exchanging a glance with me over Emma's head. "Everyone made mistakes, but they were trying to protect people they loved. And now you found each other again, so it's fixed," Emma had declared with childish certainty. If only adult emotions were so easily resolved. While Lily and I had found a comfortable rhythm together, our relationship with our father remained complex. The monthly dinners we shared with him and Sharon were cordial but strained, decades of secrets and separation creating an emotional chasm not easily bridged. He tried too hard, bringing gifts and offering unsolicited financial assistance, still attempting to purchase forgiveness rather than earn it through the harder work of honest connection. I don't know if I'll ever completely forgive him, I confessed to Lily one night as we sat on the porch swing, watching fireflies illuminate the gathering dusk. I understand the impossible situation he was in, but he had so many chances to tell the truth later. After Mom died. When I was an adult. Any time in the past 15 years. Lily considered this, twisting her silver ring in the way she did when deep in thought. I struggle with that too. But I keep thinking about the psychological concept of trapped grief, how people can become paralyzed by past mistakes, each passing year, making it harder to break free from the patterns of deception. The longer he kept the secret, the more impossible it seemed to reveal it. That explains it, but doesn't excuse it, I said. No, she agreed. But understanding helps me move toward forgiveness, even if I never get all the way there. This was the gift of having a twin after a lifetime alone. Someone who understood my conflicted feelings without judgment, who could hold space for my anger while gently guiding me toward compassion. Our separate upbringings had given us different perspectives that, when combined, created a more complete view of the world and our place in it. As spring deepened into summer, we faced a new challenge, the anniversary of our mother's death. July 15th had always been a difficult day for me, marked by conflicted grief for a woman who had been both vulnerable and damaging. This year, the date carried additional weight, as Lily prepared to commemorate a woman she had never known, but whose illness had altered the course of her life. I don't know how to feel about her, Lily admitted as the date approached. In my adoption story, she was dead. Then I learned she was alive but mentally ill. Now she's gone, but her choices, or her illness, shaped everything about my existence. We decided to visit her grave together, bringing flowers but no easy answers. The cemetery was peaceful in the morning light, birds singing in the old oaks that provided dappled shade. Caroline Reynolds' headstone was elegant but understated, name, dates, beloved wife and mother inscribed in flowing script. Mother, Lily repeated, tracing the word with her fingertip. She was my biological mother, but never my mom. She looked at me. Was she a good mother to you, when she wasn't ill? I considered the question carefully, wanting to be honest without coloring Lily's perception. She was complicated, loving but distant, perfectionistic. She had good days when she was fully present, engaged, even fun. Then there were days when she seemed to look through me rather than at me, when nothing I did was quite right. I understand now that she was probably still struggling with mental health issues, just less acutely than during that postpartum period. We placed the flowers, lilies and roses, and stood together in silence. Finally, Lily spoke. I wish things had been different. I wish she'd gotten the help she needed. I wish we'd had the chance to grow up together. But I can't hate her for being ill. I spent years being angry at her, I admitted. For her coldness, her criticism, her inability to show consistent love. Now I wonder how much of that was illness and how much was her trying desperately to hold herself together. As we turned to leave, I felt a subtle shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but a more nuanced understanding of the woman whose broken mind had fractured our family. Caroline Reynolds had not been a villain, just a sick woman, in an era when mental illness was stigmatized and often inadequately treated. Back at home, we found our father waiting on the porch, a small wooden box in his hands. He stood awkwardly as we approached, clearly uncertain of his welcome on this sensitive day. I thought you might be at the cemetery, he said. I didn't want to intrude on that moment. He held out the box. I found these while packing up the attic of our old house. I thought you should have them. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, showing a young Caroline holding infant twins. In one, she gazed adoringly at two identical babies sleeping in a shared bassinet. In another, she sat in a hospital bed, one baby in each arm, looking exhausted but radiant. These were taken before. He trailed off. Before the psychosis fully manifested, Lily finished for him, her professional knowledge providing words for the difficult truth. He nodded. There were a few days, maybe a week, when everything seemed perfect, when we were the family we should have been. His voice broke. I wanted you to see that she loved you both, in the beginning. That we all did. The photographs were a revelation, tangible evidence of a brief time when we had been acknowledged as twins, when our mother had held us both with equal love. They provided a missing piece of our story, a glimpse of the family that might have been if illness hadn't intervened. "Thank you for these," I said quietly, the first sincere gratitude I'd expressed to him since discovering the truth. He hesitated, then spoke carefully. "The doctors now say what your mother had was likely bipolar disorder with postpartum psychosis. Today, they would have hospitalized her immediately, treated her more aggressively. She might have recovered enough to accept you both." He looked at Lily. "I need you to know that the decision to separate you wasn't made lightly. I thought, it was temporary." "When did temporary become permanent?" Lily asked, her voice gentle but insistent. He sighed heavily. "When your mother stabilized enough to come home, the doctors warned that any significant stress could trigger another psychotic episode. Her parents, your grandparents, insisted that reintroducing Lily would be too risky. Weeks became months. Your mother's condition improved with medication, but she remained fragile. By the time she was stable enough that we might have considered reuniting you, Lily had been with the Mercers for nearly a year. And you decided it would be too traumatic to uproot her again." I surmised. He nodded, eyes downcast. The Mercers had become her parents in every meaningful way. They loved her completely. Your mother had no memory of having twins. The psychosis and medication had created a kind of amnesia around the birth. The path of least disruption seemed to be maintaining the separation. He looked up, eyes filled with tears. "It was wrong. I knew it was wrong. But each passing year made it harder to imagine how to undo it. This conversation, happening on the anniversary of our mother's death, felt like a fitting closure to a chapter of our story. Not an erasing of the pain or a complete absolution, but an acknowledgement of the complex circumstances that had shaped all our lives. As the year progressed, our connected lives deepened in expected and unexpected ways. Emma started 3rd grade at Mapleton Elementary, spending alternate weeks with us during Lily's custody time. My father attended her school play, tentatively embracing his role as her grandfather. Sharon threw herself into grandmother duties with enthusiasm, baking cookies and creating elaborate crafts that delighted Emma and bridged some of the awkwardness between our fragmented family units. Professionally, Lily and I discovered unexpected synergies in our separate but related fields. We began developing a therapeutic approach for siblings separated by foster care or adoption, combining her expertise in childhood trauma with my focus on communication. What had begun as theoretical discussions over dinner evolved into a formal methodology, then a workshop series, then invitations to present at conferences. "It's like we're turning our wound into something healing for others," Lily observed as we refined our presentation for a major child welfare symposium, taking the worst thing that happened to us and transforming it into a resource for families facing similar separations. The work was deeply fulfilling, allowing us to process our own experience while creating something meaningful from it. As news of our unusual story spread through professional networks, we received messages from other separated siblings. Some reunited, some still searching, thanking us for putting words to their experience and offering hope for connection. In October, a year after our reunion, we celebrated our 36th birthday with a party that symbolized our merged lives. Emma and her father flew in from Seattle. My father and Sharon hosted at their new home, a gesture of hospitality that acknowledged their desire to support our reunification. Lily's adoptive father made the journey from Seattle, meeting our biological father for the first time in a moment that could have been awkward, but instead became a touching acknowledgement of their shared love for Lily. The celebration was bittersweet, marking both the joy of our reunion and the acknowledgement of 35 birthdays spent apart. As candles flickered on twin cakes, chocolate for me, vanilla for Lily, our respective favorites, I found myself reflecting on the strange journey that had brought us to this moment. "A toast," said Lily's adoptive father, raising his glass, "to finding what was lost and building something new from the broken pieces." The metaphor was apt. We hadn't simply restored what should have been. We had created something unique from the fragments of our separated lives. Our bond was different from twins who had grown up together, deeper in some ways for having been denied, more intentional for being chosen rather than assumed. As autumn painted Mapleton in fiery hues, Lily received unexpected news from Seattle. Her psychology practice building was being sold, forcing a decision about her professional future. For months, she had maintained her Seattle client base through telehealth while building connections in Mapleton, but this development required a definitive choice. I need to decide if I'm going to find new office space in Seattle or commit fully to Mapleton, she explained as we walked through a carpet of crimson maple leaves. It feels like the universe is forcing me to choose rather than straddling both worlds. What does your heart say? I asked, already knowing the answer but wanting her to reach it herself. She smiled, the expression so like my own that it still startled me sometimes. My heart has been here since the moment I found you. Seattle was my life for 35 years, but Mapleton is my home. The decision brought both practical challenges and opportunities. Lily's Seattle clients needed to transition to new providers or commit to permanent telehealth arrangements. Emma's custody schedule required renegotiation with her father, resulting in longer school holiday periods in Mapleton, balanced by regular video calls and Seattle summers. Through it all, our father watched with a complex mixture of joy and lingering guilt. During a private moment at Thanksgiving dinner, he confessed, "Seeing you both together, finishing each other's sentences, laughing at the same obscure jokes, even moving in the same way, I'm overwhelmed by what I denied you. And what I denied myself, watching you grow up together." We can't reclaim those years, I told him, but we're making the most of the time we have now. He nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. You're both so much stronger than I ever was, braver, more honest. We had to be, Lily said simply. We spent our lives feeling half complete without understanding why. That kind of existential loneliness either breaks you or forges you into something resilient. As winter settled over Mapleton, bringing crystalline beauty and contemplative quiet, Lily and I continued expanding the therapeutic program we'd developed. What had begun as a side project had evolved into a nationally recognized approach for supporting siblings separated by foster care, adoption, or family fracture. Our personal story gave the work authenticity that resonated deeply with both professionals and families. In December, we received an unexpected email from a producer at a major podcast network, interested in featuring our story and therapeutic work in a series about unusual family reunions. The opportunity would mean sharing our most painful experiences with a national audience, but also potentially reaching countless separated siblings with a message of hope and healing. Are we ready to become the public face of twin separation and reunion? I asked Lily as we considered the offer. It would mean exposing not just our story, but Dad's mistakes, Mom's illness, everything. Lily was quiet for a moment, then said, "When I was searching for you, I scoured the internet for stories like ours, twins separated at birth who found each other as adults. I needed to know it was possible, that reunion could work. If sharing our story helps even one person find their missing piece, isn't it worth it?" We decided to proceed with careful boundaries, working with the producer to create an episode that was honest about the trauma of separation while respecting the complexity of the circumstances. My father, when consulted, gave his blessing with quiet dignity. "The truth has already set us free in so many ways," he said. "Perhaps it will do the same for others." The podcast interview process was emotionally demanding but ultimately cathartic, requiring us to articulate aspects of our experience we'd previously only discussed with each other. The producer's thoughtful questions helped us frame our story not as a tragedy, but as a journey of resilience, reconnection, and redemption. What would you say to someone who has just discovered they have a twin or sibling they never knew existed? The interviewer asked in our final session. Lily and I exchanged a glance, one of those wordless communications that had become natural between us. I answered first. I would say that reunion isn't a fairy tale ending. It's the beginning of a complex, beautiful journey. There will be grief for the time lost, anger at those responsible, and 1,000 practical complications. But there will also be moments of connection so profound they defy language, a chance to heal wounds you might not have even recognized, and the opportunity to build something new and meaningful from the broken pieces. Lily continued seamlessly. I would say that finding your biological sibling doesn't negate the family you've known. It expands your capacity for love and understanding. The pain of separation becomes part of your shared story, rather than a solitary burden. And the person you discover might be both eerily familiar and wonderfully different, both a mirror and a window to new perspectives. As the interview concluded, the producer commented on our ability to alternate speaking, as if sharing a single thought process. We laughed, explaining that this twin sync had emerged naturally despite our decades apart, as if our minds had been waiting to find this rhythm together. The podcast episode, released in February, generated an overwhelming response. Our inbox filled with messages from separated siblings, adoptees searching for biological family, and parents navigating complex family structures. Some shared success stories of reunions. Others sought guidance for beginning their search. Still others simply expressed gratitude for the validation of feelings they had struggled to articulate. One message particularly touched us. A woman in her 50s who had discovered through DNA testing that she had an identical twin she had never known existed. "I've spent my entire life feeling like half of me was missing," she wrote. "Hearing your story gave me the courage to reach out to my sister. We're meeting next month. I'm terrified and exhilarated. Thank you for showing me it's possible to bridge decades of separation." As we approached the second anniversary of our reunion, Lily and I found ourselves reflecting on the extraordinary journey we'd shared. The initial shock and pain of discovery had evolved into a relationship so natural it sometimes seemed impossible we had ever been apart. The missing piece each of us had sensed throughout our lives had been found, not erasing the past but completing the picture it had always meant to form. "If you could go back and change things, would you?" Lily asked one evening as we sat in the garden, watching the first stars appear in the twilight sky. "Would you want us to have grown up together, never knowing separation?" I considered the question carefully. "I'd want us to have grown up knowing each other," I said finally. "But the women we became through the separation, the strength we developed, the professional paths we chose, the perspective we gained, I wouldn't trade those. And we might never have created our program for separated siblings if we hadn't lived through it ourselves." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "The Japanese have a concept called kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, so the repair becomes a beautiful part of the object's history rather than something to hide. Maybe that's us. Broken apart but rejoined with something precious highlighting the fracture lines." "I like that image," I said, not erasing the break but honoring it as part of our story. The metaphor stayed with me in the days that followed, a perfect encapsulation of our journey. We had been broken apart by circumstance, illness, and flawed human decisions. But the rejoining had created something unique and perhaps more beautiful than the unbroken original might have been. Two whole individuals finding completeness together, our connection strengthened rather than diminished by the years apart. On a bright March morning, 2 years after Lily's unexpected appearance on my doorstep, we received a letter that brought our story full circle. The woman who had contacted us after the podcast, the one who had discovered her twin through DNA testing, wrote to share the outcome of their reunion. We met in a cafe halfway between our homes, both of us terrified. The moment I saw her, it was like looking in a mirror, not just physically, but seeing my own soul reflected back at me. We talked for 8 hours straight that first day. Now, 6 months later, we speak daily and visit monthly. The pain of our separation hasn't disappeared, but it's been transformed into something meaningful, a testament to the unbreakable connection that survived decades apart. Your story showed us this was possible. Thank you for being brave enough to share it. Lily and I had become part of a chain of healing. Our wound transformed into wisdom, our experience into guidance, our reunion into hope for others. The betrayal that had shaped our lives had ultimately led to this moment of profound purpose and connection. That evening, we sat on the porch of the house that had once been half of our birthright and was now the shared center of our reconnected lives. Emma played in the yard, her laughter floating on the spring breeze. My father and Sharon would arrive soon for our weekly family dinner, another small step in the ongoing work of reconciliation. "We've come full circle," Lily observed, reaching for my hand in our habitual connection. "Not a circle," I corrected gently. "A spiral. We've returned to each other, but we're not where we started. We're somewhere new, somewhere better." She smiled, squeezing my fingers. "Somewhere whole." As twilight gathered, I looked at my sister, my twin, my mirror, my missing piece, and felt the complete certainty that despite everything, we were exactly where we were meant to be. Our story hadn't been erased or rewritten. It had been continued, with a new chapter more beautiful than either of us could have imagined alone. The betrayal that had separated us had led to the courage that reunited us. The mother whose illness had fractured our family had given us the genetic bond that transcended decades of separation. The father whose weakness had facilitated our division had provided the home where we now rebuilt our connection. Nothing had been wasted, not the pain, not the longing, not the years of unconscious searching. In finding each other, we hadn't just recovered our past, we had discovered our purpose. Two women, identical in appearance but shaped by different experiences, uniquely positioned to help others navigate the complex journey of separation and reunion. Our wound had become our gift, our fracture line highlighted with gold. The imaginary friend of my childhood had become the flesh and blood sister of my adulthood. The unexplainable connection we had felt across thousands of miles had been validated in the daily rhythm of shared life. The mirror I had always sensed but never seen now reflected not just my image, but my completeness. This was the truth I would share with anyone else on this journey. Separation may shape you, but it doesn't have to define you. The missing pieces of your story may still be waiting to be found. And when they are, the joining line doesn't diminish the whole, it enhances it. A golden repair marking where brokenness once was and wholeness now exists. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.